Hi Dada,我是 Jonny.
And I'm Laura, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the British education system. Some things you might know, some things you might not know, and some things that you might find quite surprising. So how long do British children go to school? Well, they start at 4 and they go right through to 18.
So the first block of our education in the UK runs from 4 to 7, and then after that you've completed what we call Key Stage 1. What do you think people from other countries might find surprising about that part of the British education system?
I think, one, how young we start. So we start at 4 years old rather than, I think, a lot of other countries, particularly European countries, tend to start between 6 and 7. Do you remember anything from Key Stage 1?
My life was a little bit weird because...
Yes, that's true. You were not here.
During Key Stage 1, I moved to a different country. So from the age of 6 to 11, I grew up in Pakistan. But while I was there, I went to the British school. So I got a British education, but in a different country. So all of this is still familiar to me, but my experience probably is very different to most British people.
I mean, mine's nowhere near as exciting. I was going to say I remember the giant doll's house that was in reception, and it was one big enough that you could walk into. And did you have the plastic little teddy bears that you used for counting?
No, we had number blocks.
Every school had them, always in reception and year 1, and there were little plastic teddy bears, and they were always in the primary colours. And every table had them, and if you got to play with them, it was so exciting. After Key Stage 1, we move on to Key Stage 2, which is where we see Year 3, Year 4, Year 5, and Year 6.
So that's ages 7 to 11.
11, that's right.
And you have a lot of experience of this.
I do. So I have been a Year 6 teacher now for a while.
A long time.
A long time, yeah.
So if we take Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 together, in the UK that would be one school, and we call that a primary school, which is kind of the equivalent of what an elementary school would be in America. One thing that people might find surprising about primary school, and particularly primary school teachers in the UK, is that you have to teach every single subject, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do the full range of English, maths, science, PE, art, music, any sort of topic, which would include history, geography, DT, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So everything that a child is expected to know within their primary education, I'm expected to teach it. So my PGCE is in primary education. So I'm qualified to teach children from 4 up to 11. Anything that you remember that sticks out in your mind from Key Stage 2? Residential.
What is a residential?
So residential is something that's quite common for Year 6 students to do. So when you're 11 years old, just before you move on to secondary school, your school will often take your whole year group on either a day, a 2-day, or a full week, essentially a holiday. And I remember really enjoying ours. We went to the Lake District.
Oh, cool.
We did I don't know what you call it, caving?
Oh, yeah.
But in water.
Yeah.
So I was terrified.
That'd be pretty exciting.
Like the adrenaline.
For a 10-year-old.
But it was really,
yeah.
It was really fun.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. My main recollection of Key Stage 2 is that there was so few people at the school that they combined Year 4, 5 and 6 together. So I was in with students aged from 8 to 11. We're all in one class together, and I think there was only 11 of us.
Wow. I mean, that's the dream.
As a teacher, yeah.
That's the dream. In my class, there's always roughly around 30. Yeah. So sometimes slightly less, sometimes a little bit more, because you can have up to 32.
That's the standard class size in the UK, though, isn't it? 30 is like kind of the normal.
Yeah. Let's talk about secondary education.
Yeah.
The gem in the crown, I'd say.
I would reckon that a lot of British people are kind of divided into two camps about secondary school. I think most British people...
Hatred. Pure hatred.
Yeah, didn't necessarily enjoy that stage of their lives. But there's some people who would look back on it with fond memories. I guess the more popular kids at the time might remember it more fondly, but
so in secondary school, that starts from, so again we have the key stages, so year 7, year 8 and year 9 would be key stage 3,
and that's the first time that British students will have separate teachers for different subjects. And also when you're at secondary school, you start to get a bit more homework because you get homework for the different subjects.
Mainly, I think the most homework that I ever had in Key Stage 3 in 1 week was maybe 5 different pieces of homework.
Yeah.
And that was on a tough week.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people would find, especially from Taiwan, people would find surprising about the UK education system is children have a lot more free time in this country than children do in Taiwan. Most kids don't attend classes outside of school. Most of them don't do tutoring. And also the level of homework is so much less. I mean, it'd be very rare that you'd have to do an hour of homework after school.
Only if you'd forgotten to do it and you had multiple pieces to hand in.
Yeah. So yeah, here's one for you. Like, imagine, go back in time in your head to when you were 11 years old. Tell me about the schedule of your average school day.
So the school day started at, I believe, 10 to 9.
Yeah.
And then it would finish at 3:15. And homework, I think for the first year, homework generally consisted of go and write a story.
Yeah.
Or here's some maths questions, go and see what you can do.
And it'd be never really be more than half an hour's worth of homework.
No.
Yeah.
Key Stage 4.
Yeah.
When you're the big people in the school.
There is a bit more expectation on the students. So year 10 and 11, so when you're age 14 to 16, that's when your first really important qualifications happen. And they used to be more important because you didn't have to carry on at school after 16. That could be your final qualification if you wanted to. At that age of 14, this is the first time you get to choose what subjects you take. I think that's earlier than you get those sorts of choices in some countries' education systems. You start to take some subjects. You have to take maths, English and science.
Yes.
Generally, I would say the quality of language education in British schools is really bad. Like I learned French for 5 years at secondary school.
I did 3.
And I would say I learnt more Chinese in a week when I came to Taiwan than what I learned in 5 years at school learning French. So you finish your GCSEs when you're 16 and you have to stay on in education until you're 18. And people have 2 different options. Depends on what school you went to. Some schools will have what's called a sixth form college.
Yes.
Which means that the secondary school you're at, you can carry on right through till you're 18. And you can choose to go to just what's called a college. So not like it is in America where they say college and they mean university. When we say college in the UK, we're talking about education from 16 to 18.
So neither of our schools had a sixth form, so we both went to the same college. That is how we met.
We did. We met at college. What subject did we meet in?
Oh, it was either... Well, we met in 2, didn't we? Because
we had 2 classes together.
And we met in archaeology.
Yep.
And we also met in ancient history.
Colleges can be many thousands of pupils, but that means that they can offer a much wider variety of subjects for you to study.
Well, like we did archaeology, there is no way that we would have been able to do that at our secondary schools.
Yeah.
And I also did photography, which I would never have been given the opportunity to do had I stayed at secondary school to do my A-levels.
If you compare that to what because that's in most countries, I think thinking of the ones that I know about, like America and Taiwan, in that 16 to 18 age range, that's when you're really forced to really focus in on your key subjects, you know, your English and your maths and your science, so that you can pass the university entrance exams.
Yes.
Whereas in our country, it's almost the exact opposite. When you get to 16, you're essentially getting to choose whatever subjects you want.
But you do have to keep in mind, similarly to America and Taiwan, that if you have your sights set on something specific for university, they will often be quite picky about which A-levels they want you to have done.
Of course, yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind when you are choosing.
So you end up with 3 qualifications at the end of being at college. What do you think would really surprise people in other education systems about being at college in the UK?
I think the freedom.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that you're expected to do independence-wise. So parents aren't really involved. You don't get that many contact hours with your teachers, but you are given a lot more work. And the expectation is that you will go away and get that work completed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, saying you'll have less contact hours, it's probably about 15 to 20 hours for most people per week, which again, when you think of most education systems, your number of hours contact hours is going up in most countries when you get to 16 to 18, whereas in the UK it goes down. And then once you finish college, that's the end of formal education in the UK.
Yeah. What do you think is the worst thing about the British education system?
I feel like we have too much standard testing and that we put too much importance on that.
Agreed.
We care too much about test scores rather than
a rounded individual.
Exactly, yeah. What about you?
Well, it's tricky.
As a teacher.
It's tricky. Education is viewed as being really important, but the way that we educate isn't seen as very important at all. And I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of secondary colleagues, but I imagine that they would probably quite like a change in the attitude towards teachers.
Yeah, I think that's something that would surprise a lot of people about, because especially given that Britain has this reputation for being really polite and respectful.
Our secondary school children, a lot of them are feral.
At that age, there's very little respect for teachers. And I know that's the same everywhere, but I think in Britain, kids are allowed to get away with more.
I agreed. It's not just teachers, it's authority in general.
Yeah.
Something happens at secondary school where children just
rebel.
Yes.
So now I guess it's over to you guys. Is there anything that surprised you in this video? I know that Taiwan's education system is rated much higher in international league tables than the British education system. So I'd be really interested to hear your opinions about it.
So let us know in the comment section, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye-bye.